Don't California, my South Dakota. Hey everybody, it's Tristan Emond with Mindful Living Realty, a realtor right here in Rapid City, South Dakota, the gateway to the Black Hills. Back in December of 2019, I decided 2020 was my year to start my YouTube channel and to start creating videos as I've done the past few years. It just so happened that my first video was out in April of 2020. And you all know what happened in that wonderful year. The pandemic hit and we had a lot of people talking about moving from their bigger cities to the smaller urban areas, such as South Dakota. And as my videos gained traction, and it's kind of a hot topic that year, I had a lot of topics about people being scared that people were going to move to our area and just decimate it. Is that what happened? Did the migrations of Californians to South Dakota ruin the state? Let's talk about it. Now, while there are a number of positive aspects about South Dakota, the lower cost of living and no income sales tax, the number one thing I heard from most people that I talked about was politics. I know I don't talk much about politics on this channel, but this is what happened. As the pandemic wore on and the 2 weeks didn't flatten the curve, more and more states started shutting things down, except the state of South Dakota. We never had a statewide mandate requiring masks or any kind of shutdowns. Now, the city of Rapid City did shut down some of the bigger gathering places for about 6 weeks. But other than that, that's all the kind of shutdowns we had. This was very appealing to more conservative thinkers throughout the United States. And South Dakota became a very popular place to think about, maybe I should move there. So in 2021 and 2022, 90% of my business was people moving from out of state into our area. And we're not just talking about California, that might have been the biggest percentage, but I also had a number of people from Minnesota, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, Washington, just to name a few. Now, if you are a little more on the liberal side of things, you believe very strongly in the whole masking thing. You wouldn't move to South Dakota if your life depended on it. But I was very interested in 2022 when we had our midterm elections to see what was going to happen since we had a number of outsiders moving into our area. This was a critical election because Tristan Emond was up for re-election as South Dakota State Governor. Now, a lot of the outer town people, they love Tristan Emond. A lot of my comments were, well, you love your governor, we love your governor. But some of the comments, which I knew were locals, weren't as thrilled with Tristan Emond. So I was interested to see what was going to happen on this pivotal election. And as you can see from this election data here, South Dakota remained very conservative, about 65-35% across the board on all of the elections. So from this data, we can see for all the people moving into South Dakota in this past couple years, and a lot of these people were from blue states and blue cities, had little to no effect on the politics in the state of South Dakota. The majority of people that I helped move into the state were conservative people that had been in their state, in their city, a bit too long, and they knew it, and the pandemic was just that, okay, now it's time to go. This is what I was trying to tell people over the past few years, that it probably isn't going to be a problem. If you are a super liberal person living in a big city, especially warm Southern California, to make the trip all the way up to cold South Dakota, where you are strongly opposed to the political ideals of the state, just probably wasn't going to happen. The people that moved here from other states wanted to become South Dakotans and be part of the culture that we have here in our state. The next complaint is, yeah, but those out-of-towners, they drove all of our prices up. Here's the thing. This wasn't a South Dakota problem. This was a nationwide problem. Take a look at this graph that shows the home price appreciation percentage from the fourth quarter of 2020 to the fourth quarter of 2024. Here we are in South Dakota where our home prices rose over 50%. Even the states with the lowest price appreciation, such as Louisiana and North Dakota, still saw a home price appreciation of 25 to 30%. And look at Montana and Florida, 70% home price appreciation in those 4 years. In the past year, things have settled down a little bit to be probably back where they used to be. And you can see we're here in South Dakota, where it had an average appreciation for the past year of 3.9%. And then there's Florida that got hit hard by hurricanes. And then there's that condo crisis going on. So that's about a 2% appreciation. Contrast that to the 70% for the past 4 years. Did it still suck if you were a local trying to buy a property and you got outbid by cash buyers coming from out of town? You bet. But if you were a seller, you would be the one to accept that $50,000 over list price as well. And I know this increase in home prices make it harder and harder for younger kids, people starting out to get into a home. I've got 4 kids. I know exactly how that went. We're dealing with higher property taxes, making it hard for some people in a stable income to afford their properties. Affordable housing is more of a problem now than it has been in the past few years, but city and county officials are trying to do what they can by approving more and more affordable housing units. Plus, there's a couple other new construction, low-income housing developments in the works right now. The crazy home price problem isn't a South Dakota thing, it's a United States thing. How many Californians actually moved to South Dakota in 2021 and 2022? In 2021, about 2,500 people moved to South Dakota from California. By the time 2022 came along, California was the 10th most popular state of people moving into state of South Dakota with 957. In that year, the top 5 states are probably going to surprise you: Minnesota, Iowa, Georgia, Nebraska, and Wyoming. While these California move-ins are considerably higher numbers than they have been in previous years, there haven't been enough Californians in the state to really disrupt our way of life. Plus, there have been some very positive aspects to our communities from new residents coming in from all over the country. The first one is economic contributions. The people that have come to our area are starting to live and work in our communities, and they're also contributing to community development. One gentleman that moved from California raised $17,000 for Monument Health and currently sits on the board of Elevate Rapid City, which is our Chamber of Commerce here in Rapid City, dedicated to building and bolstering growth in the city. It has enhanced our workforce diversity. Now, you know as well as I do, there's a lot of white folk here in South Dakota, so having people from other thought forms, other cultures, greatly increases the diversity and different thought forms here in South Dakota. I've had a number of my clients get involved in local events, volunteer activities, and civic organizations to help with all the things going on in our state. Despite all the growth we've had in the past 5 years in the state of South Dakota, a few things, they remain the same. The cost of living in the state of South Dakota, while not as cheap as it certainly definitely used to be, is within the top 20 of the United States. Our cost of living in the state of South Dakota remains lower than the national average, showcasing that the influx of people to our state has not led to significant increases in living expenses. Our unemployment rate remains low. Usually here in South Dakota, it seems like we have a pretty decent economy overall, and that unemployment rate reflects that. It's lower than the national average and has been for quite some time. Plus, with the growth of residents, we are also seeing a growth of economy. One of the main things that happened during the pandemic was that people came here to Black Hills area and said, hey, this is really cool, took pictures, and then that fostered a lot of other people to come. And so our tourism has been off the charts, increasing every year for the past 2 years. Plus, with our friendly business environment, South Dakota has been a key factor for a number of businesses moving to our area and helping with that employment growth. Yes, we've seen a whole lot of people move into our state over the past 5 years. Yes, that's caused some ripple effects in our home prices. But everyone that I've talked to that has moved here to our state and to our city has enjoyed every bit about living in our area. They love being part of our community, going and checking out all the South Dakota things that we have to offer, and just want to be true South Dakotans. I've only had a few families that I've helped move to the area move away in the past few years. One of them was because, well, grandkid, that always pulls them pretty good. And the other really wanted a homestead, and it really gets a little cold in South Dakota winters to do that. I'm sure other people may have some different experiences than I have had and can tell a different story. But from my perspective and from what I've seen, the people I've talked to, people love living here in the state of South Dakota, no matter where they're from. If you found this video interesting, you've got to check out the one that I did back in November of 2020. Why are people moving to the state of South Dakota? Thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing day. And remember, love where you live.